Welcome to Beyond. Intrigued by stories of his great-grandfather's bootlegging adventures, Brian Christenson has always had a passion for whiskey. Throughout his decade of experience in marketing, branding, and advertising, he moonlighted in marketing and making beer and wine. Over the years, he's also extensively studied wine and spirit making, which eventually led to him taking the leap from advertising to opening Blinking Owl, Orange County's very first distillery since Prohibition. As a creative visionary with a knack for launching and marketing new products, Brian spearheads Blinking Owl Distilleries as the CEO. Brian, welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we met at a fundraising event a few months back, and I found your story very intriguing. So thanks for coming on, and we're looking forward to hearing more about your backstory and what you're working on today. So take us back to your early life that led up to your career. Can you share some stories of how this journey got started?
Sure, without being too long. So it all started, in the back of my mind, I heard these stories about my great-grandfather who bootlegged. I didn't really quite understand what it was when I was younger. As I became an adult, I got into beer, started home brewing. It really interested me. So I did that casually for many, many years. Fast forward a little bit, my wife and I got into wine just for fun. We kind of don't do anything intensely, so we started getting into courses through the Wine and Spirit Education Trust, studying wine. That led us to get involved in some winemaking projects that were based out of Crush Pad in San Francisco. So through that study led me to learning more about spirits. There's a lot of crossover between brewing and spirit making. So that led me to thinking, getting into the rise of craft distilling or regional distilling throughout the country. Same thing was happening in food. I was curious why nobody in this region had approached it yet or done it. So that led to further research, and then had this idea with my wife. I'm ready for a career change. I want to open a distillery, fully expecting her to tell me I'm crazy, out of my mind. Right. Don't do this. And that led us to even further research. So I think we visited something like 50 distilleries before we sat and wrote our business plan. I started doing some coursework at distilleries in Seattle.
And where were these distilleries at? Were they
all over? So from California, yes, Kentucky, Washington State, Utah, anywhere I could find one.
Now you had beer, wine. How did you know it was going to be whiskey? Why was it whiskey versus anything else?
It started with whiskey because I was into whiskey. It was interesting to me.
Yeah.
And cognac made from wine must and different things. So that was the jumping off point, and that led into other spirits that had some similar crossover to how they were made. So it was like a whole path of deep diving into the process of distilling from start to finish. And when I say start to finish, from sourcing your base material to milling it if it's grain, or fermenting it all the way through distilling it. So
you're like really a chemist extraordinary. I mean, you have to know so much.
You have to know so much. So I wouldn't say chemist extraordinaire, I'd say I know enough to be dangerous. And then I filled in the gaps with people who were smarter than me so I don't burn anything down or blow anything up.
So in this process of saying, I'm doing a career jump and I want to do something different, what were some of the harder lessons or things you learned the hard way?
Oh man, the list is endless, but you don't know what you don't know. Things like I'd never managed architect plans, never, started with nothing, found a space, leased a space, found architects, engineers. That was all troublesome. Hiring contractors, overseeing an entire project was overwhelming and forced me to grow as a person.
Right.
My wife as well, the whole team. There's, no matter how well you plan, there's circumstances you can't control or predict.
Yeah. It's funny, you look at corporate America and we put in a resume, they want certain qualifications and they won't even consider you unless you have those qualifications. And to me, that's total bullshit, right? Because what you just said was, I don't know anything about this process of finding a facility, qualifying the facility, and everything that's entailed in that. But what you just said was you figured it out and you grew as a person. And God, when you go see Blinking Owl, it's an amazing place. But most of corporate America is sort of in this paradigm of this way of thinking that they have to have a certain level of success. And the reality is they can bring people in that think outside the box, maybe have a different skill set, and they could just rock that position.
I totally agree. I think coming from a creative background allowed me to think creatively. And you also have to grow in your personal awareness and know what you can't do. And it forces you, if you're being honest with yourself, to identify your weaknesses really quickly.
Sure.
And then find a way to fill those in. And having my wife, and who's also my business partner, buy in, we're a good complement to one another. We're in areas where I'm not as good, she's great, and vice versa. So.
And that's a beautiful lesson. It's true. Probably makes for a successful marriage too.
It does. I mean, there were points and are points where it strains it, but we've worked through those and become stronger. The joke is we tell each other we could survive a home or kitchen remodel now.
Right.
So.
Right. So take us back a little about some of the lessons you learned in your early life that you can apply in business today. It seems to me your grandfather in bootlegging says there's some element of risk that maybe that you genetically got encoded into you.
Exactly. So when, we don't have documented history because they didn't document illegal activity, but we have an oral history, right? So it actually, in the terms of the family, was kind of looked down upon. They didn't like to talk about it. And my mom would tell me these stories. So it was really interesting. He was in Pilgrim, Nebraska. He was a dairy farmer. And after Prohibition, there was a need. People wanted to drink.
Sure.
So people, the economy wasn't great. He was a dairy farmer. He built this giant house, and it made no sense to people. How does this dairy farmer afford this? Well, come to find out, he had the still or the operation in the basement, and he somehow tied it into the irrigation system for the farm, for the cows, so to make it appear as if it was just part of the working farm. Risk. He's a risk taker.
Smart, clever.
And, a little bit shady as well. So, my mom remembers when she was a kid, he obviously wasn't distilling anymore, but he distilled through Prohibition and up until the end of the Second World War. So after Prohibition ended, it was taxed so high, you're in a poor rural community or not as affluent, so he would still sell to all the neighbors or whoever wanted to consume. So I think it was like creativity, you're being resourceful, and it's just kind of a cool story to, you had this edgy person in your past, and unfortunately, he passed away when I was a very young child, so I didn't get to spend time asking him. But my grandfather, who grew up on that farm, he had distinct stories of, farm life was rough. One time a cow fell over and broke his femur, I believe it was, and he said, yep, they would just give you whiskey or whatever the alcohol was and say, bite this stick and we're going to set that leg back in place. So now, fast forward, you're like, oh, that was whiskey that he made illegally.
Yeah,
so.
Right. What's funny about Prohibition, they actually, whiskey was legal. There was for medicinal purposes, for medical purposes, it was legal back in the day. But it's interesting. So you heard these stories growing up with your grandfather, which is just magnified. And your great grandfather now is this maybe mythic person.
Sure.
In your mind, because you're young, impressionable, right? So how did that experience inspire your entrepreneurial sort of drive?
I don't know where it comes from. Growing up, I think I learned the most valuable lessons from silly things like skateboarding and snowboarding. I spent a lot of time outdoors, and if you get into those sports, you constantly are falling down and getting hurt, and to be successful, you have to do it again and again. So you keep taking that risk over and over again. So physically, a long time, things were not risky. And as I got older, that would get in, you become an independent person and you apply those same principles throughout your life. So I didn't want to be afraid or ever felt like I had to be stuck into one job or one position. So I love art and design, but I never felt like that was all I was. Then many years later, I met my wife, who's just an entrepreneur from the get-go. So that was freeing for me too, because she would never she's completely risk averse when it comes to, if you really want to do something, plan it, and if it makes sense, go for it. So, so that's like, you know, I was already in line with that, but meeting her, I mean, she has never worked for anybody since she graduated university. So
I don't blame her.
So, I don't think she could now, but you know,
I don't blame her.
So
it's overrated, except to get a paycheck.
Yes. So I think it's just a culmination of things. You know, the mythical stories. Growing up, having parents that allowed me to do, you know, these things that weren't that popular back then. They weren't big multi-million-dollar sports like they are now.
Right.
And not that I ever had, you know,
to be the next Tony Hawk.
Yeah, but just the fact of being a participant in the things you wanted to do and to get, you know, somewhat proficient at it. You're falling down, you're taking risks, you're, you know, running from police when you're skateboarding. It's just fun stuff like that you're like, you know, I'm never gonna know unless I do it.
You know, so that, you know, next question then is, what was your inspiration for founding Blinking Owl in particular? I mean, think about it. Let's sort of set this up. I mean, you got a consistent, predictable job that's certain. You got money coming in, you got benefits, and you have this background of, you know, my great grandfather was a bootlegger, did this, and that's inspirational on probably many levels, and it spoke to you because you were involved in it in some level, but not in a commercial sense, making money and supporting your family. So what was that moment where you said, we're going to go do this?
I think through the studying of wine and learning about spirits, and on my own reading about spirits, trying different things, and thinking, wow, this is such a fulfilling thing from the whole aspect of the way we wanted to do it is the people, the community, how you could support it, from working with farmers all the way up to sourcing something and seeing what you make or what you give birth to.
It's its own motivation.
It's its own motivation, and I think there's a freedom to it, even though, you know, I work more now than I ever have in my entire life, but it's freeing, and even more so, I think, backtracking, a couple of things. My wife and I don't have any children, and so we don't feel the pressure that we can't take risks like this, right? So we can take care of ourselves, and so we don't have that additional burden. But, you know, once you have employees, it's like having kids, because now exactly.
So let me stop you. So you want to go do this thing. So sitting here today, how much did you have to learn when you said, I'm going to go do this? I'm going to find Blinking Owl. From that point to this day, do you like know 80% more, or?
Oh, 100 times more. So
in other words, you didn't have all the skill sets or knowledge to go do that. So that's even a bigger risk. I mean, let's be honest. It's not like you've done this before 4 or 5 times and you're just applying the skill sets. It's like jumping out of a plane with an iffy parachute.
Yes, 100%. So I'm not from this industry, never made whiskey. I made beer and wine at an amateurish level, you know, with, you know, knowledge. So I basically just got my hands on any information I could personally in my spare time for fun. I'd read books, I'd visit, I'd talk to people. And then when I thought, okay, this might become an idea, I had done a lot of research. Like I stated earlier, I sat my wife down and said, I want to do this. And she said, okay. At that point, then it was even more research and study, doing coursework, hands-on coursework, learning. And then that's identifying what I felt comfortable with to start this business and what I didn't, finding the right people to fill the gaps in or help me. So 1, there wasn't a 5-year learning curve. 2, I could build this to be a business that's eventually sustainable and not just an expensive hobby.
Right.
Because I remember visiting a winery once, and one of the wine owners was like, man, you got to think about it. And I think he said something like, it can either be a business or a very expensive hobby. Because, you know, there's a lot of wealthy guys who buy wineries because they need a loss or a write-off.
That's what they are.
So, that's not what I did. So really it was just educating myself as much as I could, and my wife as well, and learning, and visiting people, just any information people were willing to share, and knowing there would be bumps in the road, or we don't know everything, but that's okay, we can figure it out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you know what's funny about the wine business? It's a misnomer. People think, oh, you own a vineyard and you got wine and you're making bank and you're barely on the margin. You're barely. I mean, you're sometimes operating at a loss. There's so many dynamics and variables, and to get a club going and get people to come back and just the varietals and the grapes and the packaging and the costs. I was working with a guy whose family had their winery up in Napa, and it was a disaster. I mean, they were losing money. So they brought him in because he was a business guy, and he was trying to rewrite the ship. So it's not an easy business to contemplate getting into.
It's not easy, and if I knew what I knew now, I'd probably don't know that we would have done it. But I think that's part of anybody who starts their own business. You can't know everything.
But that's part of the fun, I think. It's that unknown, that risk, and then the challenges that you bust through, that next level of challenge.
I think being a little naive is the only way to be if you're going to take a risk.
Right.
Also, I think it gives you an advantage creatively, because rather than be the typical corporate or big business distillery, they think about things in this way because they think it's proven, whereas all these young distilleries are thinking, how can they innovate, or with a different perspective. We try to take a very creative approach to how we do things. I don't know if there's a perfect answer. It's just a culmination of trying to be prepared, being a little bit crazy. Maybe some people would call it stupid, but naive. I think you have to be. You have to think bigger than you actually are, and you really have to believe you can do it, or then there's no point.
Yeah, but you also put a lot of planning and prep in there. But
Yes.
We met when you were trying to raise funds for the business. So you have the physical structure of the business, the labeling, the marketing, the spirits. You're nailing that. You're hitting it, at all points, roughly. But then you got the big thing called capital to run your business, right? So talk to us a little about how difficult it is to raise capital in the spirits business.
Okay, so I'll give you this in two phases. So our startup was really weird. Well, it's kind of a cool story. We wrote this business plan, my wife and I, took 6 months. We rewrote it about 5 times. The first couple iterations got ripped apart, one by friends, our attorney. So, that in itself we did over and over and over. And business plans don't predict the future. So we got to the point, we had a good one. We went out, we were pitching people. It was very difficult. I'd never done it before. I never asked people for money. So out of the blue, Hoag Hospital approached my wife to buy her former business, which was specialty health physical therapy practices. So they outright bought her clinics, and she oversaw and consulted for them. So we took that as a base seed. Then we had a friend who learned about our project, who's an actress. Her name's Kirsten Banksness, and she wanted to be involved, so she matched our funds, and then her mom also liked the project. So there were the 4 of us that started with the seed round.
Sort of friends and family. Yeah.
Yes. So then from there we had enough in the beginning. We got through permitting construction. That was a task in itself. And we got to the point where we're operational, we're putting product in the market. There's a lot of regulatory stuff, so we needed to raise more money, and that's difficult from every aspect. Where do you go? Who do you pick up on the phone and call to raise money? So we started, you look for online resources, you talk to people, you ask for references. So, to this day, we probably still take 1 or 2 potential investor meetings a week. And we met at one, we pitched to a big group. It can be intimidating. They ask questions, they want to drill down in your finances, and you have to have good, coherent answers for them.
Right.
And if that doesn't pan out, where do you go next? So it's a lot of strange networking, or sometimes we've had additional investors who are just fans who show up. They come and visit us at the tasting room, and they ask. They say, "Oh, is there opportunity? I love what you guys are doing, and I want to be in." So it's not easy though. Like we've had multiple groups come and say, "We're in. We want to close the round out." They either can't get the funds together, or they change their mind. They lose interest. You know,
it's like the bridesmaid.
Exactly. It's frustrating. It's like hitting your head against the wall. And then that's where I think kind of, it sounds silly, but if you get into some type of sport and you fall down and you get hurt and you get back up and do it again, it's the same thing. So you're like, okay, today didn't go so well. I'll soak for a minute, get it out of my system.
Short memory. You really do.
Yeah.
You can't take it personal.
It's kind of like, I admire athletes who play at a high level, because if they're going to be successful, you got to have failures and just keep doing it.
So you guys in the seed round still? Are you guys in the A round? Or
we're in our second round. So it's we opened a second round of funding. We were aiming to raise 1.2. We're about halfway through it. Okay. We're looking to finish the round out.
And the money's for what? Earmarked for what?
A couple of things. Primarily, we need to add a kitchen, because if we add a kitchen, it expands our license. Right now, under California law, we're limited in what we can sell. We also have a lot of feedback from customers that were like, even if you offered small food, we'd stay, spend more money.
Thing, yeah.
So for us, it's a cash flow thing. We have to have it. It expands our license. And there's other things. We need to put some more money into marketing, increase our sales team, and produce more whiskey. Yeah. While we're getting into our stocks, we need more.
Yeah.
So, and whiskey is like cash in a barrel that you have to wait.
Yeah, you got to sit on it.
Yeah. And so these are the things we're going to use.
And you got a growing
for.
fan base, so you got to supply that, and so there's some dynamics going on. So let's talk about some of the different types of spirits you offer here. What do we have on the table here?
So a little bit about what we make. Everything is based around telling a California story. So everything's made from organic California grown grain. And here's one of those things. I thought, oh, we opened this distillery. We're just going to call up the farmer and say, hey, is there this type of grain available? And that's not the case. So it took us about 1.5 years before we could become 100% organic source. Now, it's not about being an organic certified product. It's more about supporting farmers who are using good sustainable practices for the earth and that type of thing. Right. So we make everything from vodka. We have this OC orange vodka. That's really cool. We use locally grown oranges to flavor it. 150 pounds of Valencia oranges grown right here in Orange County.
Which one's this one here?
It's this one right here.
You get that?
It's really cool. We're in Orange County. I wanted to make something that spoke to the agricultural history. It's absolutely delicious. This Aquavit is our #1 seller so far. So part of my family has Scandinavian heritage, Swedish specifically. So when I was doing the research and all of this distilling, I came across a spirit called Aquavit. And I had a friend who was living in Sweden, so she would start to bring me some, and I fell in love with it. And no one was making it here when we were doing our research at the time. So the two main things when we came up with a business plan I wanted to make was Aquavit and whiskey. And so far it's
now what's the difference between Aquavit and whiskey?
So Aquavit,
here.
Spirits get tricky. All spirits have their own legal requirements as to how they can be made, labeled, and marketed. So Aquavit, it's basically, this is how it's categorized. It has to be made from a base distillate of grain or potato, and then the required flavoring component is caraway seed and or dill, and then whatever additional botanicals you choose to add. So ours is modeled after classic Danish and Swedish style. It's heavy in the caraway seed, fresh dill, hibiscus flower, because it's the flower of Santa Ana where we distill it, and then fennel seed, because it's a very Swedish ingredient to have in your Aquavit. So it's a really herbal kind of cleansing palate spirit, and bartenders love it. It's actually growing in popularity in the United States right now because of the craft cocktail culture.
Right.
So it's really good. This is a barrel finished gin we make. It's in an Old Tom style. That just means a gin that's a sweeter style. The cool thing is we source late harvest dessert wine barrels that come from Napa. When we get the barrels, there's about a gallon of residual wine in the barrel. So we let the gin finish in the barrel for about 3 months. Now the federal government doesn't allow you currently to call gin aged. So I came up with marketing background, this term barrel vacationed, which I tell people we send gin on vacation and it comes back sweeter and with a tan.
I love
like
it.
Most people.
That is clever.
And then whiskeys. So we had to wait at least 2 years for the type of whiskey we wanted to make. The first whiskeys we've released we have a couple types of bourbon or recipes, but bourbon and rye and malt whiskey are the types of whiskey we make. So what we have here is our first what we call a wheated bourbon, and all that means is the mash bill is made from. So, if those that don't know bourbon is a spirit that has to be made in the United States. It's a protected commodity, so it can be made anywhere. It doesn't have to be made in Kentucky like many people think, but it has to be made from at least 51% corn. It has to be aged in white oak barrels that have been charred. And then if you're going to call it a straight bourbon whiskey like we have here, you have to age it at minimum 2 years. So you can imagine you're spending all this money making whiskey, and the way we want to make it, we have to wait at least 2 years. And then our whiskey will keep some aging beyond that.
So that's interesting business planning, because you got an aging process you got to factor in to supply the market. So It's 2 years on pause and then.
Yes.
So we're going to try this.
Yes.
Let's check it out. I think it was a hit the last investor presentation, because I think you gave them the product before the presentation. And
we offered it, yeah. I hope they drank more, but they were on to my plan. So,
salute.
So, cheers.
Oh wow.
So, this is our wheated bourbon. Like I said, it's pretty limited in release, but more will be coming available. The cool thing, which I did not know. Once we opened, a bunch of local historians came in, and they had done all this research about distilling and prohibition in Orange County. What we discovered is they found that they didn't distill anything other than fruit-based distillate here before prohibition, because that's what they had excess of. So there were whiskey brands here, but it was sourced by merchants and sold under brand names, but it wasn't made here. So these historians believe that we made what they believe the first ever legally distilled and aged whiskeys in Orange County when we first started. So it's pretty cool.
How'd you guys come up with Blinking Owl?
So I'll make this story as brief as possible. So I'm not originally from Orange County, but my wife and I have lived here since about 2000. We didn't know that Santa Ana had some type of stigma associated with it with Orange County. So we moved there in 2003, and we met some people who lived there, and they taught us all about the long, rich history of Santa Ana and how it used to have a thriving downtown with department stores and restaurants and bars. Well, one of these bars, some period from about 1960 to the middle of the 70s, was the Blinking Owl Bar, and it was located at 3rd and Birch Street, which is now a parking structure, unfortunately, but it was known for its neon and mechanical sign with an owl that would blink. So I thought, wow, that's just the funnest name. Like, I wonder if I could ever do something, and it kind of pays homage to the city where we distill it. So that's kind of where the concept behind the Blinking Owl came from. So eventually we'll do a remake of that original sign. We've only been able to locate some blurry photos of it so far, but we've had people visit us who used to go to that bar.
And they remember it.
They remember it, yep.
So when I first went to the Blinking Owl, I'm blown away, because if if you go to the Blinking Owl, it's a nice place. I mean, you guys have done an awesome job there. So when you go there, is there a tasting room?
There's a tasting room, yes. So we have a tasting room. It's open Thursday through Sunday, and the hours are somewhat limited. Thursday would be 5 to 9. Thursday, Friday, 5 to 9. Saturday is from 12:30 to 9, and Sunday from 2 to 6. All the hours are on our website. I can't keep track of them, everything. But so we offer a tasting room. You can taste a flight of spirits, or you can taste a spirit in a cocktail. And this is why we're adding a kitchen, because right now California law limits us to the amount we can serve you, and they limit it to 1.5 ounces per person per day. But this is an improvement, because when we started this process, this license type did not exist. It's called a Type 74.
Okay.
And before the state created this, you couldn't taste more than 0.75 ounces of alcohol at a distillery. You couldn't taste it in anything that resembled a cocktail, and you couldn't purchase any bottles at the tasting room. Now we can sell you up to 3 bottles per person per day out of the tasting room. So,
and with the kitchen, are you able to serve more?
Yep, we're not limited. They treat us like a bona fide eating place once we have a kitchen. So that's why it's important.
Are you able to offer parties there now?
Yes,
or
private events. We can do private events. So you just have to schedule private events ahead of time. If you've arranged for a private event, then you're not limited to the 1.5 ounces of alcohol per person.
So you have a nice patio on the back.
We do events weekly. Corporate events, private events, birthday parties, whatever you want to celebrate, just make sure you...
And how do they get to your website? What is the website?
So our website is blinkingowldistillery.com. We're on Instagram at Blinking Owl. All the contact information is on there. It's pretty simple. If you want to know about events, just email events@blinkingowl.com. General inquiries, just email info@blinkingowl.com.
Okay.
So...
And as part of people going there, do you offer any kind of memberships to whiskey enthusiasts?
Yes, we currently have a whiskey club membership. It's sold out for this year. It's called our Parliament Club. The reason...
Wait, how can it be sold out? Is there a limitation that you put on? Or?
We put a limitation on it because it
Supply?
Includes certain limited barrel releases. So there's only so many bottles in that barrel. This is one of those. This is the first bottle offered to our Whiskey Club Parliament members. It's our first single barrel release of our wheated bourbon, and they'll get a bottle from our first barrel of 3-year-old bourbon that will get released in a few weeks. This
is crazy, by the way. This is crazy good.
We can talk about whiskey, but in depth. So our Parliament Club, why the Parliament? A Parliament is a group of owls. So we have fun with that. So next year, we'll launch. It will become available sometime in November for the 2020-2021 year of Parliament memberships. So keep your eye out for that if you're interested, because there are limited memberships available. So
good. I like it. So what is the 5-year plan for Blinking Owl?
So the basic plan is, one, to get to break even, which we're close to. We've already done it a couple of months, but to grow to the point where we're sustainable, we're in multi-state distribution.
Are you distributing out of state today?
Just to one state, Illinois, but we're working on growing and expanding into several other states, as well as being exported to a few other countries as well. We would like to be, in 5 years, producing 25,000 9-liter cases. We're probably close to around 3,500 9-liter cases right now. Currently, our system as is has the capacity to do 10,000 9-liter cases without any additional equipment. So when we plan the business plan, we plan for 5 to 10 years worth of what our projected growth would be. So we're not quite growing as rapidly as we want, but we're picking up steam fast.
And can your current location manage the growth that you anticipate, or do you have to have other?
So the actual production we'll have to add a second still to get from 10,000 to 25,000 cases at the same location. It's already been planned for and designed. The only part we need to expand in the short term would be barrel storage for whiskey. So once we fill up our space now, we'll have to expand further into the building we're currently in, or get an off-site storage facility. Okay. So yes, We would like to be in at least the top 5 to 10 markets in the United States in the next 5 years, and at that 25,000 9-liter case production, if not surpass that. So.
And are you going to add any other lines?
Yes, we're experimenting, R&Ding some Amaros, some other specialty liquors. Our core will be our vodka, our gin, our aquavit, and whiskeys. So we'll keep those, and we'll have some seasonal tasting room distillery releases only as well. So we're trying to continue to build the experience at the distillery for people to visit as well. We want them to come and learn about distilling, our practices. We're pretty transparent. We're open about how we do things, where we source our product, our base materials from. We don't do things the easy way. It would be easier and cheaper to buy commodity grain out of the Midwest.
Right.
We buy baker's wheat because it's more flavorful, it tastes better. We buy all of our malted barley, which we use in all of our products, from Admiral Malting, which is currently the only malting facility in California. So, yeah, we're committed to making a high quality product that's also supporting the local grain economy, farming community, trying to keep, supporting other businesses in California as well.
So if you're the only distillery since Prohibition, do you have competitors on the horizon?
Yes, we've had several since we've been distilling 3 years. We're about to have our 3-year anniversary being open to the public, and I'm not sure what the current number is. There's 3 other distillers currently in Orange County, but their facilities are much smaller than ours. Not that they wouldn't grow, but yes. And there's a lot of, even in California generally, it's rapidly growing. A lot of people are jumping into it. We try to help other distilleries as much as we can. I get a lot of people who come probably once or twice a week who say, I want to open a distillery. And I try to give them whatever advice I can. A lot of them say, well, I want to open one because I like drinking whiskey or rum, and I tell them that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Don't do it. And I also tell a lot of people, you're going to need way more money than you think you do. Right. Even us planning for, almost 75% more than we thought we needed, it still wasn't enough. Still not enough. So you've got to really think big picture. We come across as being ultra successful, and I think we are building toward being a successful name, but you have to be relentless and keep working, and you can't be afraid. Also, I try to tell people to bring investors on. It's great. It would have been awesome if we could keep it to the 4 founding members, but what we're learning is we like our investment team. They're bringing good, they're great cheerleaders. They're bringing good insight. They're spreading the word. So I wouldn't be afraid of bringing people on to help you in your business.
Yeah. And I think you need those kind of investors. You need people that can help you grow your business from one level to the next, because 25,000 to 30,000 barrels is a different business plan than where you're at today.
Of course.
And the demands in the business are extremely different. So the idea that you can identify investors that can really add value beyond just the money, I think is critical. Especially your long-term success.
Absolutely. And I think another point to be made is, because you wrote that initial business plan, that thing changes all the time, so you got to look at it and update it, and it changes weekly. Yeah. But back to that thing, people who approach me and want to get into it, yes, we try to give them sage advice, but don't do it because you like drinking something. You think you're passionate, and you might be about making it, but man.
Well, startups will whittle away that passion really quick, and the reality hits, rubber hits the road. You gotta have a different motivation and insight. And what I appreciate about what you said earlier is you really did your homework. You really, before you jumped into it and took that risk, you really did your homework and learned as much as you could. I remember I was listening to Elon Musk, and when he started SpaceX, the guy goes, did you always know this much about rockets? He goes, no, I just read a lot of books. Now, obviously, he's otherworldly bright. Some people think he's an alien, he might be. But the idea that you don't know something and you have some aptitude. And he just said, no, I just read as many books on rockets and everything I could think of, because even his friends were like, why would you want to get in the rocket business? And they sent him some videos on rockets exploding, right? And he was at a point where on his fourth launch, if it didn't happen, SpaceX wouldn't have happened. So the reason you get into something has to be, I don't know if pure is the right word, but you got to be clear-eyed, because it's not easy doing what you did.
It's not. And that brings up a good point. A lot of people who think they want to do this don't realize the inherent danger that distilling alcohol is. I mean, if you're going to process grain is flammable and explosive. Distilling can we're making a flammable, explosive product. So if your equipment's not engineered and built properly, installed properly, or run properly, then you're creating a major hazard. I'll give you a good example. While we were in permitting, that's a whole other story, which was not easy, a distillery in Kentucky blew up, leveled, killed one individual and burnt the other employee, over 90% of his body, because they had bought a still from a person who lived down in the area of them, who made a crude version of a still that worked, but it had a pressure, it wasn't engineered properly. It had a faulty pressure relief valve that he installed, that he bought from Home Depot.
Pressure built up, boom.
Boom.
Yeah,
It's
a bomb.
So we took all these things into account. We basically went out, and I figured, if I'm going to invest and really do this, I got to find the best equipment that's on the market that we can afford. There's guys entering the market now. There's about 20 more still manufacturers that you can get, but I went with a company out of Germany that's been building stills for almost 200 years, and they have a track record of safety, and so there is talking about doing your homework and your research. You really have to get into it. I visited not only distilleries but equipment manufacturers, and how much support do they give you, what resources do they have. So our still manufacturer, they have systems all over the world, so when we have questions, we can call them, and they can call and say, have you thought about this or this? And here was a cool thing too. So a lot of distilleries I met that were about the size of startup we were aiming for would say, you should get double the size of your still, because we're growing so fast, you need a system that's double what that is. So we were about ready to do that. And then I met this still manufacturer, we talked. We took our business plan with them and reverse engineered it from 10 years down to startup.
Nice.
And they said, you don't need a still that big. Oh yeah, we're gonna grow so fast, we need it. They're like, you don't need it. It was kind of hard to hear. And we're like, you're not in manufacturers.
You're not getting our vision here, man. Come
They're
on.
like, we got systems everywhere.
Yeah.
And then they broke it down and they said, well, think about it. You're not going to start out at the gate making that much product. You can't. Okay, that's a good point. So why are you going to waste all these resources running through a bigger system in terms of gas to make steam and water? You're going to be losing money. You don't need it. And they were absolutely 100% right.
What a great partner.
Think about running efficiencies in this way. Let us be your guide, because we know this. And so that was awesome.
Yeah, that's huge. Saved you a lot of money.
Yeah, so we spend more on the equipment than other people, but the things we get in return, it's invaluable. So
what is the one or two reasons that you give somebody to start a distillery or a whiskey business? If you looked in the camera and said, you do it for these one or two reasons, what would that be?
I'd say you have to have an interest in the entire process, or be a marketing brand, source your product and make a label, become an expert in blending. Part of the draw for us was not only, we like to handle every part of the process, from sourcing the grain, meeting the farmers, the people who grow it, which we've met many of our farmers, to bringing it in-house and making it exactly our way, to our specs. You have to really like that level of detail, or you're going to hate it really quickly, because your passion can turn into your biggest nightmare real quickly.
Double-edged sword.
So, and you have to like this industry, and you have to know, I mean, you're in the alcohol industry, you have to have some level of control in this business or it could get
Who
out of
regulates
hand.
alcohol? I mean, from a what's in it standpoint.
So we're regulated by the Tax and Trade Bureau at the government, federal level, and then each state has their own alcohol control. So we're overseen by the federal government and the state alcohol beverage control.
And does the state come in and say, we know that the ingredients in this label is in fact what it is?
So they mostly let the federal government handle that, and then they manage it more in terms of, they can come do that, but they refer to the feds as how
Do the
it's
feds come in
made.
and inspect you
Yes.
to make sure you look at your quality documents, your records,
They
that
do.
you're doing what you say you're going to do each batch?
Absolutely. So we got audited by the federal government in our first 6 months of being opened, which scared us to death, but I figured this is a good learning opportunity. I'd rather learn this now than 5 years in and have some
they could shut
tax
you down, or some
liability.
other- yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So we have to track every single piece of grain that comes into our facility and every single drop of alcohol that leaves. So we file reports monthly based on what we've produced, what we are storing, and what we're selling. So it's one of the most highly taxed commodities in the United States.
What is the tax on a bottle? Roughly?
Well, right now, that's a good question. It's taxed on proof gallons. So currently, we had a temporary relief for small distilleries in this country, a federal excise tax reduction, which is up. We're trying to get it renewed, but it's approximately $13.11 per proof gallon, which is really high. So this current tax reduction that's in place reduces that for your first 250,000 gallons, which we're nowhere close to producing that much, to
Sure.
$2. So it's allowed us in the first 2 years of this tax reduction to hire a full-time salesperson. So it's
it's a big deal.
really beneficial.
Yeah.
That's why we're very involved in trade organizations that help start up young distilleries like us. It's amazing. I meet a lot of small distillers who don't want to get involved in these things because they think paying $500 annually is too much money, which I understand. And I always tell them, if you can't afford not to join this trade organization, because nothing gets done without going through the proper political channels.
Right.
And so it's a hard conversation. I try to tell them, you've got to join these things. It's crucial. Like 13 a proof gallon to $2. We save thousands quarterly on our excise tax that allows us to put it back into the business and support growth in our business.
Right. Phenomenal.
So
Let's switch gears a little bit. Who's that person? I mean, you're an amazing guy. I mean, I've never met somebody in the distillery business or the alcohol business that went from one career to this. So hats off to you. Kudos to you. Who's that person who's had the most influence, or persons in your life?
So I've thought about this a lot, and it's multiple people. I would say one, my wife, because she's entrepreneurial and she never says, no, we can't do that. It's like, well, let's have a plan.
And she went from the medical into the distilling
She
business,
calls
right?
it healthcare to wellness. So I think we have a strong group of friends that our close group are very entrepreneurial. So we've always been surrounded by people that do their own thing.
And that's the norm.
That's normal. So when we go to dinner, we have people we can talk to about business, and I've got this issue, I've got this. We've seen multiple of our friends struggle and then all of a sudden be successful in their business. So it's kind of my close friends and family, just learning through them, not having to live it, and sage advice, as well as, our families have gotten behind us always, like, that's awesome. It's a huge risk. I don't want to take it, but we think it's great. Yeah.
Absolutely.
If things don't work out, you can always live in our parents' basement again,
And have a great story.
Exactly. So I think the thing that's hard is you have to get comfortable with the parts of the business you fail, and those people we look up to, which are our friends, support us.
Yeah.
They're like, well, yeah, maybe you made a mistake there, but not everything you've done is the wrong thing to do. So
they give you some perspective.
Exactly.
To the crazy. Yeah.
Absolutely. So without naming them all specifically, they know who they are.
They know who they are.
Yes.
Yeah. You're here. Yeah. So what are one or two pearls of wisdoms that you could offer people listening, whether it be their personal, professional life, that they took that advice, it really enhanced their effectiveness?
Oh, so I would say try to be as self-aware as you can. So I'm not perfect. You make mistakes, get over the mistakes and learn from them.
Yeah.
You're gonna make mistakes, and if not, then you know something that nobody else knows. But don't let making a mistake stop you from making decisions in the future. I also think it's, because I still struggle with this, you gotta find people to work with you. You can't do everything yourself. I mean, I can't hire all the people I want or need, but at some point you have to pass things off to other people and trust them. Right. And they may work out, they may not. And it takes time to build your team, right? So every time you feel like you've got this perfect team, and right now I have a perfect team of people, you don't want that person to go on and do the next step in their life. You just got to let it happen, because what you find is, oh my gosh, there's other good people to fill in that role.
There's the right talent at the right time,
exactly,
based on the stage of your business. Yeah.
And I think for me, it's always trying to be a little bit better every single day. That might not always happen, but always try, right? I think a lot of this is you got to keep doing it. Mm-hmm. There's going to be days you don't want to go to work. You're like, oh my, are we losers? What have we done? Are we failing? But you just have to get up and keep doing it. You fall, you got to get back up and keep trying it again and again.
Right.
Because if snowboarding and skateboarding and other things taught me anything, eventually all of a sudden
it's going to hit.
It hits, and you're like, how did that happen? And then you do it again and again, and you're like, it keeps happening. So
I remember this guy. He was like in the BMX. He started the big air ramp in BMX, and he was out in Oklahoma. I don't know. Can't remember his name. He was profiled in ESPN, and he got his bike up to 30 feet above the deck, and he landed. But in that story, he's like, yeah, you just kept doing it again and again, and he busted his spleen. I mean, he wrecked his body. But his point was, yeah, I failed, but I just keep going at it, and he would jack up his face or break an arm, come back and do it again and again. It's just repetitive, and eventually. He came to the big air event, which became the X Games. Yes. And yeah, but it was really an homage to him, because everybody said, yeah, you're the dude that started this. You're the one that paved the way. But the whole point you're making is, yeah, you can't look at today what's going on. It's sort of like big picture. And yeah, it's a bad day. It's just another tricky day. And you just got to say, I'll shelve it. I'll take the lesson, but I believe in the plan. I got to keep just in the business plan. But fundamentally, if you go to Blinking Owl, I don't get any of that vibe. What you're saying, what I get is an amazing business, a great concept, and a great vibe when you go there.
And that's what you should have, you know, and that's what we're creating. We want you to have that. We'll deal with the setbacks.
Now, I saw a picture with a full head of hair and it's dark.
Yeah.
So then the stress, you know,
yes.
There's that.
I'm turning whiter and grayer
and that's
much
startups,
faster.
Man, that's startups.
It is, you know, well, to that point, startups or people, at some point, you have to take care of yourself too. So, you know, the first year I think I gained 20 pounds. Stressed out, eating, and then finally it hit. It's like, the stress is going to be there. You take 45 minutes to an hour every morning. The world's not going to stop without you. We're not that important.
Right.
The email can wait 30 minutes in most cases, an hour. Take care of yourself. Just a little thing. So we started doing that, you know, eating healthier, you know, run every other day, do whatever it is that you have to do to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Because the business can't be healthy if you're not healthy.
That's well said. That's powerful.
So, and you know, you're the leader of the business, you know, and sometimes you're going to make good leadership choices and sometimes you're not. And in my business, it's unique that we've got the mom and dad of the business that are there day to day. So the employees treat us like mom and dad. Sometimes they don't get the answer from dad, so they go ask mom, right?
Right. Play one off the other. If you can go back and give yourself advice, what would it be?
Probably, you know, let's raise even more money. Don't try to be stuck in the build has to be this way where we have 80% of the company, like allow other people to come in and from the startup phase. And also, there's a lot of little things. Just get prepared mentally for how you're a startup, you know. It's not going to be easy. I don't think we ever expected it to be easy.
But you never have any idea what it's going to be until you're in the thick of it.
You don't. I also think I would have told myself to not be as ambitious, like try to grow a little at a slower pace, you know. But I don't know if that's good advice either. So.
And is it in your DNA to do that?
It's not in my. Yeah, it's not.
I mean, you're a risk taker by definition.
Yes.
Yeah. So slow. What's that?
Yeah. Or maybe don't be as naive. I don't know. I definitely think to make sure and not that we didn't, but you know, take time for my relationship with my wife. That, you know, because the first year was really hard on both of us, and not because of us, but because of the business. But be aware that we have a relationship outside of the business relationship. So
you got a unique dynamic because it's you and your wife, and you guys are all in because you have to be.
Yep.
You're passionate about what you're doing. And I would imagine if you go home, it's sometimes hard to separate and have a totally unique, different conversation outside of what is top of mind, which is business. So
exactly.
How do you do that?
My wife is much better at that than me, and I'm learning because she'll be like, "Stop talking."
She cuts it. And
stop talking, and
well, that's because women can multitask. Guys are like unimodal. They focus on whatever they focus on.
So she's good at that, and I'm trying to be better and more self-aware of that because here's a good thing of advice. Don't let the little things eat you up, because when you're an owner, you're so detail-oriented. Like, in the big picture, get to that, but don't let it eat you up, right? It in the scale of things, it doesn't matter.
It's nothing, yeah.
Because as an entrepreneur, everything will eat you up if you let it, right? Because you want it to be perfect, and you want it to be the best all the time.
Well, it's an extension of you in a sense.
Yes.
Right? Extension of your vision, extension of your personality, extension of a lot. And rejection sucks, right? But failure is also bad if it's perceived because of choices you made that could have been different.
Yes.
It's easy to beat yourself up as an entrepreneur, for sure.
Yeah, and you've got to, like I said, take care of your health. Like when you get outside of the work, which we do, like we have to set a time. Like, don't email me, everybody. I'm out of the office on Monday, Tuesday. Like, unless it's life-threatening, don't contact me.
Don't do it.
Yeah. So, and then also, I think the good thing too we're learning is like, let one of us take a weekend. Go have a girls' weekend. Like, get out of here. I can handle the.
Really important.
So,
really important.
It's learning those things, those balances. So,
is there anything we haven't covered you'd like to share with the audience?
Geez, I don't know. We've covered a lot. I would just say come and try some Blinking Owl for yourself. I hope you can taste the heart and the effort we put in everything.
It's pretty amazing.
We believe we're making a really good product that's high quality, that you can feel good about drinking. And you know, we're transparent. If you come to the distillery, say hi. We're usually there. So
nice.
And the only other thing I would say, especially to somebody in this going back to one of your earlier questions, one thing I didn't realize with this business is it's like we're running 3 separate businesses, and that's what I was not prepared for. Tasting room hospitality is its own business.
Right.
Production manufacturing, the actual spirits, things sourcing toppers, glass, another business, and then now building the distribution or sales network is an entirely different business. Right. So you got to treat it that way, and don't feel like you have to be the expert in everything. It's where you got to find the people to be who are the experts to help you. So.
Right. That's awesome. That's great advice. I mean, nothing to say. Where can they learn more about you again? How can they find you?
BlinkingOwlDistillery.com.
Okay.
There's pretty good write-ups on our team, founders. Man, I hate to say this, but find a good attorney, because we love our attorney. Pretty sure I'm paying for his daughter's college education, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Damn attorneys.
Yeah, good ones are great.
Yeah.
They save you from making more mistakes than you probably would.
Indeed.
But yeah, BlinkingOwlDistillery.com, at Blinking Owl online. Yeah.
Brian, thanks for coming on. Enjoyed your journey.
Thank you.
This stuff's amazing.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
That's it from Beyond. Everybody, you got to go to the Blinking Owl. I've been there. They're just amazing people. In fact, one of the guys just had an encyclopedia knowledge of everything that we were experiencing there. And so your crew is top notch, and they're well trained, and
they're awesome.
It's a great group. So go check out Blinking Owl. And if you're an investor looking to make an investment, I think you need another $600,000 in this round. Yeah. So let's spread the joy, spread the word. If you're interested in investing, you know how to contact Brian.
Yep. It's simple. You could email info@blinkingowl.com. It will get sent to me, and we can talk.
Awesome. info@blinkingowl.com. That's it from Beyond. Thanks for watching. You can learn more about Beyond on Beyond Ben Bobo on YouTube and on our website, beyondbenbobo.com. Until next time, remember, becoming is better than being.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, sir.
That was awesome.